Hello and welcome. We have with us Lieutenant General P.J.S. Pannu, former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defence Staff, that is HQIDS. General Pannu, thank you very much for joining us on Republic TV. Operation Sindoor has been a massive success and the nation in a way is celebrating the victory. The message was pretty clear that it was whenever there is a terror attack, India will hit back and India will hit back hard. What I want to understand from you, sir, this is one of the conflicts between India and Pakistan where we actually did not see a man crossing the border from both the sides. It was drones, it was missiles, it was the air defense systems shooting down aerial platforms. I want to understand from you what has changed between the conventional wars that took place between the two countries to the one that we just witnessed.
Pranam, one is the India-Pakistan context, and another is a global context. When you look at how the global security apparatus is slowly changing, you can measure it from what is happening globally. There are trade wars, which in any case was brewing up end of March, beginning of April. In trade wars, of course, this defense industry has got a huge contribution into how the advanced countries make money over the nations who are either at war or are on the fault lines where the defense industry benefits out of it. So therefore, from trade wars, you go on to technology wars because after all, the trade gets supported by the technology, the artificial intelligence, the cyber warfare, the space, and how the electronic warfare, digital warfare, and autonomous warfare is being shaped. So when you start looking at the global perspective, you get a different picture.
Right.
And from that different picture, there are two surprises, or more than two surprises, that in Indian context, we've been talking about the future wars will be short and intense and very high tempo.
Right.
But when the Russian-Ukraine conflict started unfolding, everybody thought that in weeks or months that the whole conflict will get over.
Correct.
But I think you are almost getting to closer to the fourth year.
3-4 years now. Yeah.
And how long did the First World War or the Second World War last? They lasted more than 4-5 years.
Yeah.
So really speaking, the war stamina is the one which one wonders that what should be the war stamina preparation for a nation.
Right.
And how during the war, the nations build their stocks and bring the reinforcements, recruitment, and how the new soldiers either get recruited, trained, or they already have a stock of it, or they can even come from somewhere else, and you know what I'm talking about as far as Russia is concerned.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we felt that there is enough happening in Europe and Russia, but then all of a sudden there was a new front opened up by Hamas attack, and we thought, Hamas, cooped up in a very small Gaza Strip, would be just a matter of a couple of hours or days again for Israel, completely high-tech and always prepared for war and always alert. And I think every citizen of that country is a warrior because they've all served.
Absolutely.
It'll be just a matter of time that the entire small Gaza Strip will be thrown into the ocean. It didn't happen. They're also in the second year, or I think they will also get into gradually third year. And then between these two conflicts, then you saw the entire arc expanding. And some of it actually was moving towards east and west, more towards east, where they started attacking Iran.
Right.
And there was some kind of an imbalance that got created. Then Trump's trade war started.
Right.
In which globally you see India was sitting pretty to be somebody who would benefit out of
an advantageous
the
position.
concessions which will come, that the manufacturing from China will come to India.
Right.
And I think there would be some trade benefits that India will get
Right.
in comparison to any other country.
Right.
So imagine Pakistan sitting. Now you look at the dates on which the trade announcement of tariffs
Right.
happened by Trump. And then you look at the date when the chief of Pakistan Army announced the jugular vein.
2nd May is when Trump announced.
Yeah. Okay.
2nd April is when.
2nd April. And then you come to Asim Munir giving the statement. How much time did he take to absorb that the benefits would come to India? Okay. He would have taken about 2 weeks or so to absorb this.
Okay.
And then how could India now rise all of a sudden with the new opportunities which are to come in the way? The Chinese losing business, the Indian gaining business. The Chinese losing the trade opportunities, Indian gaining the trade advantages. So if the Pakistan-China combined thought machinery did not at this time come down to creating a war for India, what else do you think they would do? So he made a statement after that immediately. It was reinforced by the action that the terrorists took and how they took and the design in which they incited India to get into war.
Right, sir.
Now, on the Indian side, what was happening in India? On the Indian side, of course, is peace prevailing. Everything is fine. India is emerging as global, stable, and power which would possibly even have the ability to balance the world.
Yes.
All of a sudden is drawn to war. Once it's drawn to war, then the short, intense war, or the technology, or the evolving Indian military and evolving Pakistan as a nation state which has been harboring terrorists and the low-cost option that they have been using, and India actually transforming its military to theaterized and more autonomous warfare, digital warfare, and indigenized equipment that it is talking about. So both sides, there has been work in progress. So all of a sudden the nation is taken to war, and I think India did exceedingly well. That within a fortnight, I think India created that new way of fighting a warfare which possibly in theory they were preparing for. Right. So it was short, it was intense, it was precise, and it had limited mandate. And I think it was designed in a manner to have a quick victory and quick break away from the war situation so that it could go back to do its normal business, which Pakistan is by the way, is going to continue to prevent that India going back to normal, peaceful conduct of business.
Correct. But then you're giving me a completely different perspective in this case, sir. Does it mean that there was a larger design behind the Pahalgam terror attack?
Purely by putting the sequence
the geopolitical
in which activities have happened. I'm just constructing it, and if you find if there is any other sequence you would want to add into it, then we can talk about it differently. But if you agree that this is the sequence, then
if that is the sequence, then that also means that Pakistan was indeed expecting a larger than or a diabolical. I mean, a harsher reaction. That is also what you're saying necessarily.
Now, going back to what was happening in Pakistan, if you leave the trade and the Indian opportunities aside,
right?
What was happening in Pakistan over years, you would realize that ever since Asim Munir became the chief of army staff, his first challenge was his own prime minister, the political awakening of Pakistan, the strength with which the Prime Minister Imran Khan was dealing with the army. He was becoming more popular than the military, and military does not want that kind of a popularity because the ISI and the military put together run a terrorist network.
Yes.
And therefore this becomes a monolith. But what was happening is that with this kind of a strength that Pakistan military has been used to see a politically motivated violence where even a co-commander's house is getting attacked and the co-commander running away from the rear door was too much for Pakistan army to absorb.
The absolute powerful institution within that country getting...
And second thing, what was happening to the Chief of Army Staff, Asim Munir? First time that they officially increased the tenure of the 3 service chiefs and the joint chief of staff.
Correct.
to 5 years.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing, because in the short term, he knew that he will not be able to get the situation under control.
Right.
So he required longer tenure. So that is one thing that happened. Second thing that happened was that in jail, Imran Khan was still influencing the political landscape of the country. Nawaz Sharif and his brother Shehbaz Sharif, who are now political figures supposed to be looking at themselves as powerful,
Yes.
being the puppets of the army.
Despite being the puppets.
Puppets of the army, have been onlookers, just making some synthetic kind of appearance, certain fabricated statements only to look good. And Asim Munir himself, having been educated in a madrasa where his father was an imam,
Yeah.
he was actually commissioned during the time when Ziaul Haq was Islamizing the military.
Right.
So that is the time some preference was given to people who were actually completely radicalized, because they wanted some radicalized. Otherwise, the Pakistan Army has been very Western, because it is the Western.
Yes.
Either they were taken to West Point or Sandhurst, and many officers, whiskey drinking, English speaking generals,
Right.
and that was not what Ziaul Haq wanted.
Right.
So some intake was completely homegrown, completely radicalized
Right.
officers. And I think the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan slowly came up in a being better acceptable to the radicals,
Right.
who were actually now in control of the military, because they became the strategic asset of the military. Now, the moment you declare them as a strategic asset, it means the dependency on the tanzeems and dependency on the radicals was completely understood by them. So they started actually creating problems. And some of it so happened that the terrorists per se, when they knew that they could actually bring the whole world down, and you know what happened in 9/11, you know what happened in 26/11, you know that Osama bin Laden himself was number one terrorist who's staying in the military cantonment.
Correct.
So you start seeing the linkages that the terrorists or the global network of drugs and terrorism, I think they became supreme. And that is how they started hitting back at Pakistan Army. And Pakistan Army wanted to internally stabilize themselves. The only way to stabilize themselves was A, cry religion, B, talk about two-nation theory. If you start talking about religion, maybe Afghanistan, which is also a country which wanted Pakistan to give them certain areas which should belong to Afghanistan. They're fighting for it.
Right.
So therefore, some Afghanis or Afghanistan as a nation state has been working hand in glove with the Northwest Frontier Province,
Right.
And Baluchistan. So therefore, Pakistan Army, without any strategic depth, has been fighting terror created by their own
By their
own
yeah.
selves.
Correct.
On their western front.
Right.
So on the eastern front, they had to actually create a bigger problem so that the entire Pakistan could get united. So that Asim Munir could become the supreme leader, whether he will actually stage a coup, not stage a coup, or through their mutual understanding of the external exigencies, he would usurp all the power and become the Chief Marshal or Administrator.
In fact, that's going to be my next question. That do you think the Pakistan Army, if at all it has achieved the motive that it was set out to achieve, what may, as someone who understands that country very well, what do you think may happen in Pakistan? Will there be, will they try to capitalize on whatever unity that country has gathered within the past 7 days or so? What will happen now?
Internally, Pakistan is already managing, Pakistan Army is already managing through creating certain provisions where the civilians could be tried in a military court.
Right. The Supreme Court, in fact, just...
And if Imran Khan is brought to a military court, same thing will happen as it happened to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto.
Okay.
This is the only way.
So you mean there could be assassinations?
Yes, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was not assassinated; he was hung.
Precisely. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
probably the legal way of putting it.
yeah. So it could go in any direction. So Asim Munir has to protect himself from many threats, from the Afghanis, from the Baluchis, from the terrorists who are against him. So therefore, he recites all that would please, he recites all that verses before he makes a speech, only to make sure that, look, I am your man.
I'm your man, yeah.
And now that in Sindoor, you saw the spectacle when the terrorists or the leaders of, these terror outfits are dead, the Pakistan army is actually giving them a ceremonial, send-off, carrying the coffins and giving them all the ceremonial military honor. So what does it mean? It means that the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan has got many problems to handle. India is just one of the problems that he created so that he could handle the internal problems better.
Right.
If this had not happened, he in any case was actually crumbling down from the political, from the terrorist, and it's the population which was more now aligned to Imran Khan, and they had been attacking the houses of the military officers themselves. So I think it's quite a mess, and I think this is the only way that if you're getting into a mess, create a larger mess, and then become a savior of the mess.
But then, coming and talking from an Indian perspective, we were set out to eliminate terrorists. Of course, we've hit hard. We've killed family members of dreaded terrorists. The ones that India wanted. But have we completely achieved the message that was sent once? And second, is there a possible complete elimination of terrorism that can happen, given that they have a state funeral in Pakistan, given the state patronage that they have within that country?
Pranav, only our intelligence agencies would know if they have a long list of terrorists that they wanted to kill, and how many of them got eliminated and how many of them are still surviving.
Okay.
Second thing is that even intelligence agencies may not be able to go down deep into the probable terrorists who were lined up. After all, when you declare somebody a terrorist or want to really build a case against a terrorist, he has to have a past. But how do you build a case for a terrorist who has a future?
Okay.
So you do not know how many are mentally in that state and how many are going to be impacted by what is happening.
Okay.
So there are no military formal units of terrorists. They are just a group of people who are mentally ready to fight a jihad, which they have actually redefined the meaning of jihad, which was more of a struggle than to fight against anybody who their religious leader declares a fatwa on.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the way forward? As a common Indian citizen, while I'm brave, I'm very proud of the bravery displayed by our armed forces. My question to you is, where does this go from here? How do we set up? Is there a possibility of setting up an ever ongoing counter mechanism to stop this from happening ever?
I think Pakistan has given India a great opportunity to build its armed forces to a point that we are also experienced and blooded. And none of our army units is without experience, because we've been fighting in Kashmir. And now they have given another opportunity that we've tested our equipment. And of course, Chinese have also tested their equipment, and Pakis are also testing their equipment. We have done extremely well. And when you do extremely well, sometimes you should not stop there. Today, you can do bean counting and say we've done extremely well. But I think we need to prepare for the future as to how much would change in Pakistan or the supporters of Pakistan. How would they redefine their own objectives? Because Pakistan is not going to become a friendly nation to India after Op Sindoor. If you think they're going to become friendly, obviously that is not how it is going to be.
Right.
If Pakistan was, in a manner of speaking, saying neutral things sometimes was only to look good to some people. But I think today's Pakistan is going to start teaching their own children again, as they spoke after 71 war. They put it in the curriculum to say that we have to avenge the defeat of 1971 war. I think they would further radicalize their own society.
Okay.
They would make their society believe that India is an enemy and it is their task, and they were born, at least this life should be lived to plan, to work against all the interests of Indians, militarize and militarize and militarize. For India, of course, this challenge is going to remain. And I don't think Op Sindoor would stop Pakistan from preparing for the next war. It is just, when you go to a boxing ring, you have one bout and you have the second one.
Okay.
And then you get a bloody nose and you come back again. After 71 war, maybe Indira Gandhi would have thought this was the last of it. And now Pakistan has learnt lessons. Pakistan has lost half of its territory, which became Bangladesh, and here and after Pakistan would mend its ways. Did it mend its ways?
It's not.
No. After signing Simla agreement, Indira Gandhi would have believed that here and after this is the line, and then let international forces or let the future generations decide how we're going to deal with it. Right. But at that time she felt that she's done a neat job of it. But was that the end of it? No, it wasn't. So I would want us to understand that history will continue to repeat. India needs to continue to prepare. Okay. But India needs to prepare in a manner that we prepare with our own industry. We prepare with our own science and technology. We prepare with our own citizens to protect ourselves. Outside help to a growing nation of Indian stature will come if they need India's support. But by itself, I don't think so any support would come in the long-term basis. In the short-term basis, well, some amount of support would come, but I don't think so India would look at support. India would want Atmanirbharta.
But then, sir, my question is that, there was a lot of discontent, or so to say, probably some level of disappointment that the ceasefire came in too early and that it was announced by a US president. Several of a section of the society was of the view that no Op Sindoor should have continued and there shouldn't have been ceasefire. Had it continued, what should have been the aim of this operation if the ceasefire wasn't there, sir?
I would not use the word ceasefire for the moment. I think Op Sindoor, the construct of Op Sindoor, was based and announced in a manner that we have stuck at 9 terrorist sites, and here and after we are not going to do anything, and it is a proportionate action taken, and it is non-escalatory. So it means that the pause, or a strategic pause, or something which they felt that should not be continued here and after, was, I think, factored into the mission statement itself. So when you factor it in the mission statement, obviously there would be a pause, because you say it and you want to adhere to it. That we've hit you, but this is the last. But if you respond, then we will see. So it becomes an action-reaction kind of a thing. So when Pakistan started counter-attacking through the aerial means, then India had no option but to take the next step. And the next step was to start also hitting the military targets. That was not the initial limited mandate as it was announced. But constantly, India has been using an expression called proportionate. So they never wanted to give a disproportionate response. And disproportionate response would put them into a rally of disproportionate to disproportionate. So we went from proportionate to proportionate. So, but the proportions actually in the second phase itself became so tough for the Pakistan to handle, the DGMO picked up a phone and called.
Yeah.
Now, to understand the American President Trump, I'm not very sure who called, and because you see, it is the American Vice President, or even I think Trump said that we have nothing to do with it. It is your conflict.
Yes,
Please
initially
handle
they
it.
said we have nothing
So
to do.
how do you all of a sudden, when the ceasefire or the pause has already been put into effect, that the statement changes?
Correct.
So I'm not very sure whether it happened this way or that way, but well, this is how it is being talked about.
Okay.
But since I'm not sitting in any government positions to understand who called who, but I would say that the strategic pause was built in.
Okay.
Once it happened, I think the statements also underwent a change, because after all, in the trade war, there are opportunities. And I think Trump would have lost the opportunity to do a trade kind of a deal, because he's a man who does deal.
He's a businessman.
He's a businessman. So he would have felt that if these nations go to war, in any case, there are wars being fought elsewhere in the world. So his trade agenda was now looking less significant.
Yes.
So he wanted to sound more significant.
In the upper
So
hand,
yeah.
yes.
So he upped his own agenda
Right.
to bring it to trade rather than the territorial war.
Right. You rightly mentioned that a country of India's stature may not get support from the international community in the longer run. Tactically, we might get, but longer run, we may not. Whereas when we saw on ground, Pakistan really was supported to some extent by Turkey and China with the drones landing here, which were Chinese-made drones. How do you view this? As a military general, are we 1 against 3?
Currently, when you talk about known unknowns, what we know is that Turkey supported by a few planes landing and some drones being given. This is how it is being reported. We also know that the Chinese equipment was being used by the Pakistan military. These are two knowns.
Right.
What is unknown is how it is continued to be supported. If the Chinese military equipment has been tested, would they again open up another front or next front? I mean, the next time or the next bout with India, to maybe go back to the R&D drawing board and say, okay, now we are ready again, so let's have a second one.
Okay.
Because they're only gathering data of. So it is the defense industry is at war.
Right.
The sentiments. It's very interesting actually. You can measure the sentiments of war through the share markets. How the share markets are shaping.
Yes.
The defense industry has all listed shares and how their shares are being. So everybody is making an assessment. So if the Chinese equipment manufacturer is losing the share in the market, then obviously hundreds and thousands of people are making an assessment on the Chinese equipment.
Yes.
If the French or any other equipment provider, or there are some defense companies in India who are Indian, if their stocks are going up, obviously how many minds are working on their business. So I think there is another TRP, if you can say, which totals up through these sentiments of the share markets.
Correct.
Because after all, warfare is certainly become a business.
Right. Coming back to Pakistan, and probably I would want to conclude with that Pakistan also witnessed a certain amount of resistance probably from the BLA, which may have seen this as an opportunity. Do you see going forward the Pakistan army faces internal challenges in a way that could lead to a disintegration of that country?
Pakistan Army's construct is a very strange construct. There are Baluch regiments. The fair percentage of Baluchis in the regiment is suspect. It has got many regiments which are from the frontiers, northwest frontier province, but the share of Pakistani officers and Pakistani troops in it is also very high. There are northern agencies. Pakistan Army has a corps of Punjabi command and control.
Right.
They are the ones who are actually dominating the Sindhis, the Pakhtuns, the Baluchis, and so-called Gilgit-Baltistan northern area people.
Right.
So actually, there are fault lines within the army. One religion, mind you, one religion and fault lines.
Within one, yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you look at some Christians and some other people there, given some menial jobs in Pakistan Army, which is also true, that is one part of the story. Second is some are radicalized, some are not radicalized.
Okay.
Because after Ziaul Haq wanted to Islamize the army, there are many who are actually not completely radical yet. So I think the mullah within the army and non-mullah within the army also are at conflict because they get the support of the terrorists and the others don't.
Right.
Suppose, just for the sake of argument, the spectacle in which the army was carrying the coffins of the terrorists would say, but there are people. How are there people? Because many terrorists are related to people in the Pakistan army.
Yes.
So how are they going to sit at home? One brother is in the army and another brother is fighting against the army
as a non-state actor.
As a non-state actor. Actually, if you take a list of the fault lines, I think you will run out of the length of the paper. There's so many fault lines in that country. So therefore, they stitch the fault lines together through a two-nation theory, because they know that two-nation theory is actually a big sham. So therefore, they put the cover of two-nation theory, and everybody talks about, Islam as a glue, right. Kashmir as a glue, hate India. So, these are certain rallying points,
right.
that India is going to attack you and you come together. The Hindus are going to attack you, come together. Then within them, the army and the political establishment have their own fault lines. The haves and have-nots, the Jagirdars, they're big, rich landlords. They are very different lot of people.
Yes.
It's a big mess. So how do you think Pakistan would manage all this? I shudder to think.
So to put it in perspective, did Munir use this opportunity to glue together the fractured elements within? And if yes, how long can he sustain? Will there be a coup? Can there be a disintegration? Can there be a split within the army itself?
If you go back to the days of Kargil, and you would know that Musharraf, when he was visiting Sri Lanka, he had already now become somebody who could take over Pakistan, and his plane was not allowed to land in Pakistan, if you recall that. But he used the army to secure a base, and he could land his plane. And rest is all, he became the president later on.
Yeah.
The moment of Vijay, our units were mobilizing, if you tune to Radio Pakistan, they were already abusing the military there. Because the moment the military takes the nation to war, there are huge amount of propaganda which is within Pakistan, about the Pakistan army and within Pakistan, that these people are going to usurp all the power.
Right.
I'm sure now they have refined the propaganda machinery, that outward communication and inward communication, maybe our ISPR would have handled it well.
Yeah.
But knowing how it has been happening in the past, I'm sure there is huge amount of political propaganda against the Pakistan army and the politicians.
Okay.
That would happen because that is the DNA.
Okay.
And if that happens, I think either there will be a coup or Munir will run away from there.
Just a too good to be thought or a journalistic headline searching that if I could do. Will Munir be the next president of Pakistan? Can Munir be the next president of Pakistan the way General Parvez Musharraf did become?
Or could he be the one who would run away and live in exile? So it can be either or.
You'd want to leave it at that?
Because internal dynamics of Pakistan change by the minute. And therefore you don't know. Anytime when you get out of your studio, you might find that the Pakistan story has undergone a change or not. Time will tell.
Wonderful. General Pandu, thank you very much for joining us. We'll keep tracking the developments as they happen and keep coming back to you.